Monthly meeting of the MRH Board of Education to order on September 21st at 7 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on in the agenda, I want to make a note that our public tax hearing, which was scheduled tonight, has been rescheduled for next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. The county was delayed in providing all taxing jurisdictions with correct information, so we've had to recalculate our taxing recommendation, and we'll be holding that over Zoom. There will be an opportunity for public comment, and information is in board docs. Do we have anybody for public forum, item 1.03?
No. Madam President, can I move to amend the agenda? I'd like to add 1.04 for an oath of office.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1.04, oath of office. I will now administer the oath of office to our student advisors. If they can join me up at the front of the room, please. As prescribed in Article 7, Section 11 of the Constitution of Missouri. I, my name here,
Katie Corcoran,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of School Board Student Advisor in and for the School District of Maplewood, Richmond Heights, St. Louis County, Missouri, to the best of my ability, according to law, so help me God.
according to law, so help me God.
Before we move on, I would like to recognize both our President and Vice President of the Principals Advisory Council, as well as all of the students joining us here tonight who are members of the Principals Advisory Council. I want to congratulate you on your service. The board has been advocating for positions on this board for students for a number of years, and I am gratified that our leaders today are committed to creating this opportunity for you and that they have worked very hard to make this happen. So thank you, Mrs. Huffman, Dr. Jameson, and our other building leaders for bringing this into fruition. It is the board's obligation to consider the perspective of all district stakeholders, and your voices are essential in helping us gain perspective on student need and student voice. So thank you and congratulations. We look forward to working with you. Those of you who are here and not participating in the board meeting, if you have extracurricular activities or homework to attend to, or you have to go back to speech and debate, I welcome you to leave at this point if you do need to. You're not obligated to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but thank you.
Thank you, guys. Do we have all 9 members?
Yes.
Can we take a picture? Yes, I did.
All right, picture time.
Do you need to go over there?
Picture time.
They just ran out the door.
That's right. Chances.
Who left?
Madam President, we do need to take a 3-minute recess.
Yeah, can I get a motion to take a 3-minute recess?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. All right.
We're in recess.
So that, folks.
(7:07 p.m.) Approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3.01 in our study items, construction change orders.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Holzer, CFO here for the Maplewood Richmond Heights School District. We have a few change orders in front of you, most of which are still from the existing building, not the new building. I won't read them all to you. Some of the more interesting ones, we remove walls and find ductwork and pipes that we didn't know were there. We take off roofs and then put joists and realize that there's a wall that they were supposed to go on that isn't suitable for those things because there was better walls behind. So lots of little hidden things and all of things that we were expecting, those unexpecteds. Other than that, we've got one other item on here to put light in one of our attics that gives roof access. And it's not paid from construction funds, but it is its change order, so I had to go in here as well. So if there aren't any questions, that's all I have.
No questions? We'll move on to item 3.02, the Kelly Services Agreement revision.
Let's see if I can get this to show for us today. No. Voila. Awesome. Good evening. I am here to present the Kelly Services agreement tonight. And part of the Kelly Services agreement is for our substitute staff members in the district. So initially, I'll start with just giving you some background. Maplewood Richmond Heights entered into a contract with Kelly Services in February of 2015, and we contract with them to handle all of our substitute staffing. And Kelly Services essentially is responsible for every aspect of it, from the hiring, the recruitment, interviewing. There's a daily assessment from DESE, that survey that they have to take, all of those aspects throughout the employment process. This agreement is continuous. There's about 30 days where individuals, if they want to discontinue the agreement, they can do so. And the last time I brought this to you was August of 2022, and that was because the Missouri minimum had increased to $12 an hour, and at the time we were paying our clerical staff less than that. I want to bring you this background information just to let you know why I'm bringing it back now. So currently, there was a compensation study that the Office of Human Resources conducted, and this was due to numerous factors. First, our field rates had decreased. We also looked at our competitors to see where we ranked in the region to determine whether we were evaluating our rates to see if we were effective, to see if the rates were adequate and we were competitive with our regional partners and individuals throughout the state. And so we conducted this compensation study to see if there was additional factors that we might consider in terms of how we might increase our vacancy rates and be more competitive in the region. The first attachment that I have here is actually the employment agreement. You will see that we are looking at increasing positions. We added school nurses. Previously, our school nurses were handled through Maxim. This is an increase in terms of the bill rate, the markup rate, but we will see a reduction. Maxim charges us significantly more than Kelly Services is charging for school nurses, and we know that we will have a vacancy, a long-term vacancy, potentially this school year. So we will save some money by going with Kelly Services, and all of our substitute staffing will be under one umbrella. So just looking at this contract, it has the pay rate, the type, whether it's hourly or daily, the markup rate, I'll talk about that a little bit later, and then the bill rate. So there's an administrative services fee that Kelly Services charges us to be able to do all of those aspects of employment that I previously talked about. I also want to draw your attention to this line underneath the grid. Assigned job description is required for each position that is filled, and so, or listed. So therefore, because we added school nurses to this agreement, then we needed to make sure that we were bringing forth a job description. So the second attachment is actually that job description. It gives you an overview of the expectations of the school nurse. This job description was actually vetted through our district attorney. She looked that up along with myself, and the director of student services also viewed this as well, since he oversees and is the liaison for school nurses. You will note that it states that the title of the nurse, the individual could be a registered nurse or a licensed practical nurse, and so a LPN. We prefer registered nurse, and that has been communicated to Kelly Services, and so they will do their best to ensure that when these vacancies occur, that a registered nurse will be actually filling the positions. The next attachment that I have here is just the external partners who partner with Kelly Services. And so when an individual decides to work for Kelly Services, they are the employer, and those individuals are placed in the districts or the charter schools that are a part of that agreement. I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that when you look through the document, you will see that there's a range in fees that individuals pay. The range is from $110 to roughly $200 for the rates. Maplewood Richmond Heights sits at the bottom of $110. And so we, obviously based upon that, may not be as competitive as we could be when individuals have an opportunity to work in any of these areas. The daily rate, in some instances, increases exponentially if they are working multiple days, and so you might see a difference of $5 or $10, but over time that individual is losing a significant amount of money if they choose to work in Maplewood as opposed to some of the other districts, and some of them are geographically very close to us. The next attachment are the sub rates from last year. So I tried to capture from the employment agreement or the contract from last year. That's what you see at the top, what our current rates are and the proposed rate. I'm going to go through this a little bit more in detail. Again, we are at $110 for our substitute staffing for teachers, and then the long-term staff rate. What happens is from day 1 to 10, individuals have the opportunity to make $110. On day 11, they can make $112, so it's just a $2 increase. This is not necessarily an incentive for individuals, so that happens from day 11 to day 20, and then on day 21, the rate increases to $162. If you look at the bottom, I'm proposing that we actually increase our rate from $110 to $125. That's what you saw on the previous employment agreement. And also, I'm recommending that we implement a retiree rate. Many of the districts you will see have a retiree rate. This was a part of the exit survey, so there were 6 employees who retired from the school district last year. We did not have any the year prior, but last year we had 6. And many of those individuals, as a part of the stay and exit surveys and then the exit interviews that I conducted, indicated that they would like to come back and work for MRH. But they're like, but the pay, you know? And so therefore, this is something that I think, even for those individuals who are connected to MRH and love the district, it is concerning for them. So I wanted to make sure that we were more competitive and also that we implemented this process that many districts have, and that is throughout the agreement. So I also wanted to draw your attention to the fact that I removed that tier, that intermediate tier, and I am recommending that we start off at $125, so we raise the base rate, and then on day 21, we move to $175. Again, making us more competitive in the region, and also this helps us for our payroll to not have multiple tiers in which they have to bill for. So it's just cleaner on both ends. Then we're looking at clerical. I'm recommending that we increase the clerical rate again. We moved it to $12 since we were required to by the state. All districts, all of our positions in MRH start off at a minimum of $15 an hour. So my goal is to be able to have some alignment with what internally we would compensate individuals for and have a minimum rate of $15 an hour. And so for retirees, they would make an additional $1 more, $16 an hour for clerical. Then if you go down to the bottom, again, I added nurses. And because nurses are very difficult to find, it's a very hard to fill position. Kelly Services started off at $25 an hour minimum. They will not go under that. So that is the recommendation, and that's, again, looking at what other districts are paying in the region. It's commiserate with what our partners are paying. Then there's a long-term rate for that, which is $30 an hour after 21 days. And because these positions are so difficult to fill, the markup rate is 1.5. And so I went back and I asked Kelly Services, if we're going to have a 1.5 markup rate for our school nurses, then can we look at the markup rate for the other positions and potentially provide some type of reduction? It was originally 1.35. They did reduce it to 1.33. And so there's some savings there. If you go on in the document, I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to see what other districts' sub-rates are outside of Kelly Services. And so they don't partner with Kelly Services. It might be another staffing agency, or they might handle their subs internally. But just for you to have an opportunity to see the competitiveness. So this was a study that we pushed out through Human Resources. Also, our CFO provided some information from his finance group where individuals were also looking on that end as well. And so I combined both of those surveys so you would be able to see the full range of individuals who provided responses. And I believe you'll see that we aren't as competitive as we potentially need to be able to fill our vacancies. This final attachment that I'm going to show you is basically our fill rates. So I pull for 21, 22, and then also 22, 23. When Maplewood Richmond Heights initially started off with this relationship with MRH, we had a 95% fill rate. And then the pandemic happened, right? And so certainly we saw some decreases and reductions in the amount of vacancies we were able to fill. It has decreased even more. So right now, our fill rate for the previous year was about 67%. One of the things I have asked them to do is to remove the Discover Club and to also remove our SSD rates from this agreement because it skews our data slightly, but our sub rates still definitely have decreased. So I wanted you to be able to see that. And you can also see by locations, some buildings struggle a little bit more than others. with the vacancies, excuse me, because individuals may not want to work in that particular setting, and so we actively have to work to ensure that we have individuals in our building. This next slide is SSD rates for Maplewood, Richmond Heights, and so again, because a SSD staff member is filling out a sub vacancy on both sides, MRH and SSD, we're able to disaggregate that data and to be able to tell how many sub vacancies are being filled on SSD side and how many are being filled on MRH side. So here you'll see what those rates are. There was an increase in SSD sub rates, and you will see that their fill rates also increased as well for that following year. They also pay their paras and their teachers very, very comparable, and so they are having more vacancies filled in that regard. This final slide is MRH SSD, and you'll see that not many of our positions are being filled on the SSD side. So I've definitely had conversations with our staff members internally here to be able to talk about how we might be able to pull this information out, and so it will not impact our data moving forward. But we still know that our vacancy rates are definitely dipping, and we want to make sure that we can do something to move the trend in a different direction. So ultimately, that is the end of the presentation. I wanted to make sure that I brought this information to you so you have an opportunity to look at all of the data and determine what the district next step would be in terms of the recommendations that I am bringing forward. Do you have any questions, or are there any questions that I might be able to answer? Yes,
I have a couple. Thank you so much. That was very thorough, and you answered a bunch of my questions before I even got there. As an aside and something for the future, we now have this nice new nurse job description. I might be curious to see how it compares to our actual nurse description, and does it need to be updated to make sure our permanent nurses have the right job description? But that doesn't need to be on the table today, but it made me think of that. Could you talk a little bit, I'm sure our community is aware of this, but of what the impact of a low fill rate or a not 100% fill rate, where we're going to see that show up?
We see it mostly in our teacher vacancies. Right now, the middle school is really struggling currently to fill vacancies.
What does that look like? Are we putting classes together? Are we teachers not getting their planning periods?
So we have a building permanent sub in each particular building, so that individual is very busy. Our teachers are also giving up their plan times to be able to sub, and so individual teachers are rotating to be able to fill the vacancies. And again, they need their plan times. They need to make sure that they have an opportunity to kind of plan and prep and prepare and press pause as well. So it looks like our building principals filling in and being in those buildings and spaces. Because the secondary building, and again, we are filling a squeeze at the middle school, I'm certain that the high school, they're helping out just because it's one location. And so it's not ideal. It's not ideal.
I'd also like to add that it does also impact professional learning. So when we do professional development with our staff members, we need to pull them out of the classroom to do that work. Then they are interrupted from the professional learning and have to go back to be in their classroom.
Well, and what kind of special school, the SSD services are we not providing because we don't have enough staff to be able to provide that? Whether that's social emotional, whether that's academic enrichment, whether that's speech path, are those all the things that are decreased because of the percentage decrease in fill rate?
Absolutely. We actually have our director, Emily Crespin, here who could probably speak to that.
Did you want to come up, Emily?
Yeah, I don't know the best, but I'll hover over this microphone.
It's a microphone up front, yeah.
So I think it's all of those things that you did say. Yes, it's combining groups. We have small groups of students that are receiving services. That's the case in our CWC classes where we have 2 teachers sometimes it's then just one teacher in there in terms of what that looks like.
Can you tell the community what CWC is?
Yeah, absolutely. Class within a class, where we have both a special educator and a general educator in the classroom providing instruction to students. So that could be then that the special educator is the only instructor in that classroom potentially for a portion of that, or that that special educator is pulled out to support a different group without a sub.
Great questions.
I can't seem to recall. I know during COVID, we had also a nurse sub in district. Is that position been maintained for 2023, 24?
No.
Okay.
That position was paid for through ESSER funds.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
So
recall.
There's
Yes.
not a
Okay,
rotating.
there is not a pot of money for,
No.
to support
And there's not a
an extra
person
nurse. Yeah.
in the nurse position who could swing to different buildings for coverage if necessary.
Okay.
No.
On your final slide, where we're looking at the fill rate percentage, can you talk about the dramatic difference in need between buildings?
Yes, middle school is really hard right now, and so I think it's the age probably of some of the students that subs typically throughout the region, so not just MRH, subs typically tend to choose high school or elementary, early childhood. So that is just a regional challenge that when individuals choose to sub, they're less likely to choose the middle school setting, even though our middle school students are phenomenal. So I think that is one of the challenges certainly that we're seeing. We are also experiencing higher rates of unfilled vacancies at the early childhood center as well. So again, there might be numerous factors that contribute to that, but that's where I feel like we're experiencing the majority of the gaps. Our Discover Club workers who were previously working on the Kelly Services side, they did not charge us a fee to move those individuals over to MRH, and so we did not lose those individuals. They are still working for Maplewood, Richmond Heights, and Discover Club, but just we are the employer as opposed to Kelly Services. And since we never did fill all of the vacancies that we initially thought that we would, there were about 5 positions I think were slated. We never really got to that point where we were able to have 5 vacancies that, so that's one of the reasons why we removed that, but it was just really hard to fill. And then other than that, I think those are the things that I would say are the highlights in terms of struggles that we find. Another thing is certain days are difficult. There are higher absentee rates on certain days, and so therefore it's going to be harder to have to fill if there are 12 sub vacancies that they have to fill as opposed to 20. And so Dr. McGee has done a great job of trying with the professional development to put those increases of those staffing needs in advance. I think that has been super helpful. One of the things that I have noticed is that 30% of the vacancies, if it is within 24 hours or less, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually fill that. And so communicating to staff members that if you know that you're going to be out, to be able to put those vacancies in as soon as possible. We can always cancel it. If not, if we don't need it, but it's very difficult then at the last minute to try to get a sub when they just have limited time to respond. So that's another thing I think in terms that I've noticed about just the sub vacancies.
Do we pay the teachers like a sub rate when they give up their plan time to teach in another class or what have you?
We do. We pay them the extra duty rate for that, so they are compensated for it.
Nice.
Good question.
Aside from finances, I don't see why you don't do this, but that's for a later discussion further in the meeting. Then we'll ask Chris those questions.
All right. If we have no other questions, we will be voting on this later tonight.
Thank you.
Item 3.03, our board resolution on membership in the Success Ready Students Network.
All right, good evening, board. I would like to bring to you an opportunity to participate in a network or organization. Last year, we participated, myself, Mr. Davenport at the high school, and a number of the members of the learning team participated in what was called the Success Ready Students Network, and we participated in what was called the Innovative Learning Design Zone. I don't know why we have to make these so complicated, but basically that group that we were in last year was really a learning group. We got together monthly. We learned from partners like Marzano and Associates, from the Aurora Institute, and a number of nationwide or international organizations focused on Success Ready. And by that, they mean real world, authentic learning partnered with competency-based education. What that would be mentally in your framework of mind, if you can imagine that there would be a scoring guide or a rubric that has a description of qualities of characteristics that we would like to see a student understand, know, and be able to do, as opposed to what we've traditionally done in education being a point-based system or a letter grade A, B, C, D, F. So utilizing a competency base more accurately describes what a student understands, knows, and is able to do. Now, we're not ready to go all in on that yet. We've got a long way to go, but learning about this, being a trend in education, and understanding that this is the way of Missouri, the way that we are moving forward as a state, and it's also specifically highlighted in our strategic plan as something that we want to invest time, effort, and talent. Well, just so happens, luckily, the state is also investing in those resources, and private organizations, nonprofit organizations like the Coffin Foundation are also supporting this research and this information. So we would like to participate in this. We've had the opportunity to involve teachers, administrators, and expand the group that gets a chance to learn, connect, and grow across the state, and it's been very fruitful so far. So this resolution is brought to you to give us the official approval to participate in what's called the System Design Zone.
Dr. McGee, can you also talk a little bit about the partnership piece and with whom we will partner as a result of the resolution?
Yes. So some of the partners that exist within the Success Ready Student Network identify as, again, Marzano and Associates, or Marzano Resources, also the the I4PL. I know that's the name, and I always forget the organization, but it's an organization out of Wisconsin that designs systems around personalized learning. And then there's additional opportunities like the Aurora Institute, which is the, again, international organization for competency-based education. And we also wrote a grant to attend the Aurora Institute as a cohort later this year, so we're excited to bring back some learning for that. But really, honestly, us being able to participate in this not only gives us access to those resources we would not have access to, but also partner with other districts around the state. What other questions might I be able to answer for you?
There's already been one cohort that's gone through this network, correct?
That is correct.
And this group advocated for the state to revisit MAP testing as being the culminating assessment that these districts participate in. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so you'll notice on the second page of the waiver, the second page of the resolution, there is an opportunity, and we will choose when the time comes to participate in this, to be a part of a waiver to utilize the state-based assessment system to determine how we're doing, how our kids are doing. And we'll be able to have the opportunity to dictate what we think is the correct tool for that, whether that be our own competency-based measures that we've determined, or potentially a tool that we already use, like NWEA or STAR, which are our benchmarking systems that give us real-time accurate data in the moment. Because one of the biggest issues with our state system is that we would take the assessment in April or May and not get results until October. And that's just not actionable data. That doesn't help us get our students where they need to be and our teachers to get where they want to be. So that is an opportunity that we will make that decision at a later date and time, and we will update you. But we will participate if we're a part of the system design zone. We'll be members of the second cohort to author what that waiver would be. There were 8 parts of the waiver that were submitted to the state board. The state board passed 7 of the 8 parts unanimously, so there is obviously a lot of excitement around this with the state board and support for this. The part that was not approved was centered around the start of school, because that piece had some legislation associated with it that the state board was not ready to action at that time. Which, of course, you can watch the recordings of the state board and see that interaction. But what was the main thing to focus on is that the content of this waiver was unanimously voted to approve. So we're moving in a very exciting direction.
And I heard you say you wrote a grant to go to the conference.
Yes.
There's no membership fees. There's no other fees that what I'm noticing is the cost would be to cover teachers or professionals that have to leave the building for the day to go to that conference. There's no other hidden costs that we need to be aware of.
No, nothing. And even with the grant, that is a separate institute just adjacent to this. I wanted to let you know that we are continuing to look at opportunities for intersectionality of making sure that the work that is in our strategic plan is connected to a network, is also connected to our professional development, that we are all moving in one direction and not fragmented about where we're going and how we're doing it.
So how many individuals who are student-facing would be impacted by being pulled out?
Currently, the answer is 2.
Okay.
And we are still evolving the membership. The amount of time out of the classroom is minimal. Most of the time we've been really trying to focus on people that would not necessarily need a sub, as we've heard that subs are hard to come by. But luckily, we know these dates and events ahead of time. We're able to put that into the system ahead of time in order for it to be fulfilled. And if we don't, if we're not able to participate, we often find an administrator that we can tap to step in, because we do have a plan A and a plan B.
I appreciate the financial, thoughtfulness there. I do also, I think just because this has the potential to really impact the experience of teaching in a classroom, I do think it's appropriate for us to engage those student-facing, staff members in this work. That is a potentially huge shift to move from working towards the MAP test to working towards something
bigger,
different. Yeah.
And how does that
like
work
a portrait of a graduate, maybe.
How does that work? I mean, this is a little premature probably, but with like retention, when students, are they expected to meet these competencies, or they're retained, or how would that play out?
Well, I think we're about 5 years down the road before we get through all of that. But yes, I do think part of the work that you're going to see happen because it aligns to our strategic plan is really making sure that our curriculum is sound, that we understand what our outcomes are, and that we have tiered supports in place for students across, both for enrichment and intervention. And I think that's going to be the things that you'll see, and in 5 years, it won't be a question. You're like, oh, that's just how we do business.
So how would MRH equip the parents or guardian to remove these barriers and to create a solution? Because we want the parents involved. They got to understand what's going on also.
100%. None of these, any of these shifts are done quickly. They take time, they take education, they take collaboration. There's often a desire to get to an A, B, C, D, F as quickly as possible because parents understand that. But we already do a lot of this work in our ECC and our elementary. This is not a categorical shift because we do a lot of this style of thinking at those different grade levels. The shift truly is in our secondary level where we've done some of those traditional things, and that's where we got to learn. We got to invest in our teachers, provide support and systems and opportunities to make those. And we can't just be our students and our teachers. It has to be our community as well.
Just to add, I think I want to lift up that Melissa Foos and our alternative services staff have actually been doing a lot of this work and started the work last year around competency-based learning and looking at growing the metaphor in those programs. So they have Wednesdays where they go out and actually start exposing students to different people in varying fields, and then also aligning the work that they do towards competencies and ensuring that mastery is occurring. So they've been doing the work. This is year 2. She will actually be coming to the board to do a presentation to share the benefits of the work and also the impact that it's had on the learners in the program and how it's really changed how students have had access and the success that they have. So I will say that they are doing the work and have been doing the work and are much further along than the high school, but the opportunities that exist will be beneficial for all students. At my superintendent's meeting Friday, RPDC did hire someone to actually support with increasing apprenticeship and interns in the local school district. So I'm looking forward to actually sharing that information with key staff members to begin to partner as well.
We will be voting on this resolution tonight as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3.04, the 2023 C Board Policy Batch.
Thank you. As MSBA sends us policy updates, we bring those items forward. I've received a interesting question during CBTF from one of our members around, how we get policies and how they are actually developed. So just to put into the space that the board or a community member can actually bring a policy forward for consideration, but most of our policies are a result of law changes and things of that nature. So for 2023 C policy batch, we have 4 policies. Policy AC basically added a required statement that aligns with the non-discrimination statement required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There are no additional changes to policy AC that's coming forward. Policy BBBA is related to board qualifications. So normally the board qualification is that the participant had to live in the state for a year. The added piece is that now they require that board members who are interested in running or being a part of the board also have to live in the community where they reside for a year. This does not include urban districts, just for suburban for that particular policy. Board policy BBF is the board ethics policy. So the board is very familiar with MSIP 6, and we've talked frequently about the leadership standard that is in place for the board. And so this just is looping in the MSIP 6 language under L2, the leadership piece, so that it's included in the board ethics. So I like the way that they are beginning to think about the intersectionality of MSIP 6 into the board's leadership, into the policies associated with the roles that the board members have. And then the last policy, policy EF, same with policy AC. It is for food service management, and they added the same statement as board policy AC to align with the non-discrimination statement required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Those items will come back at a future board meeting to be approved or adopted. Are there any questions?
All right, let's move on to item 4.01, our MSIP 6 update, climate and culture survey.
And as Mr. Estrada comes up, I did finally have my DESE meeting regarding feedback for our strategic plan. I just want to congratulate Dr. McGee and the work that he's done to actually lead that, but also to share that there's an added piece being added for us to complete in the form of a narrative around climate and culture. So this is a new item that we were not aware of. So we will be completing that to ensure that we meet the requirements of the submission required by the state. Mr. Estrada.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. Thanks, Dr. McGee, for driving the presentation. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is a brief update. We talked about this last month. We were exploring a new climate and culture survey. We administered the DESI survey last year. We met our basic needs, but we really wanted more data, flexibility, really speaking to our community. So we're exploring 3 additional surveys. Panorama, which is widely used in the region, Character Plus, and University of Missouri. So really, just a quick update. We talked about that last month, but the update on this, highlight on the next slide is some things we've done since our last meeting.
Oh.
So, since we last met, our SEL CAT team, which met last Tuesday, that's right, last Tuesday, correct, used the hexagon tool to look at all 3 surveys. And we had 22 people on that team. We broke up into 3 groups and examined all 3 surveys for need and fit usability. And really what it's about is like, are we asking the right questions? Does it reflect the value of our community? Is it an adaptable tool? So we went through all 3 of those surveys, and they did kind of rank them.
Sorry.
It's all right. Thanks. Okay. So our next step after that is our leadership team, which will meet next 27th. We'll look at the same surveys, but work at the 3 different criteria on that side. We're looking at evidence, support capacity, what's the things like cost, what support can we get from our partners, and is it solid in terms of reliability and valid data that we can use for our community. So that's what our leadership team will be looking at next week. We'd love to get the surveys in front as we narrow them down in front of some students and parents to kind of get their feedback as well. One of the things from one of the surveys, for example, they do ask a lot of great questions, but we were concerned about whether or not all the students could really get their head around all those questions. You know, because they were kind of, I just thought they were kind of too detailed. They didn't really speak to our community, so they were good questions. But we had some questions. We wanted the students to kind of weigh in on that. What do they think about those kind of things? So students and parents weigh in. After that, we'll make a recommendation to our central office administration, and this covers such a recommendation to you guys. I don't know if it will be voted on, but we'll certainly give you guys an update. So that's basically the update. Next month, I'll have some more information for you, if not sooner. The rest of the slides are really just repeats of our last presentation, but I wanted to kind of keep them connected. Okay. Any questions?
And this, Dr. Jameson, the narrative that you mentioned, that is in the style of DESI, just continuing to change the goalpost, is that?
It is new. I did mention to Dr. McGee today, I said we have a couple of new items, so I'm not sure where that actually, it was not shared during the commissioners meeting, because I'm also on that committee, so it is a new piece of information, and we've already done the work, so let me say that. The information has been presented to the board. We've looked at the trend data. We've made actions in regards to that, but to actually take time to check the box, to put it on a form, is laborious, but it is new, and I still do not know the deadline for submission for it, so I just know that it's due, and it will be due.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
Item 4.02, our construction update.
Good evening again, everyone. You may have noticed there's some exciting things happening out front on the new building. Dr. McGee's going to pull up the pictures and scroll through those so you have something to look at as I speak. But the most exciting thing is we're getting the roof on the gym now. So that's been I'll say a barrier to completing some other things in the main building, like drywall on that first floor, on the ground floor. So here's shots of the building as it is. So you can see we have some drywall going up. We have the tape and mud going up. Insulation, which is super important for sound, not just keeping things stable temperature-wise, but keeping the sound. This is a huge step forward too, because the windows and the storefronts, once those are in place, we seal up the building envelope, then we can really start cooking on the inside. So that's underway now. They moved to the front of the building this morning, and we're seeing glass there. The gym lobby glass is in. That's plastic right now, so you don't want to walk too far out there, you'll fall. Lockers were delivered this morning. Those somehow are going to squeeze down into the basement through the building. That's going to be a bit of an adventure. This is our new gym lobby. And again, drywall is still going up. That'll go all the way up to the roof deck once complete. These are the restrooms. So all of the rough-in work is happening. Things are moving forward very well, very quickly now. And I guess the other big thing that's noticeable is the west side of the building. The masonry work is going up on that west side. After this week, middle of next, they'll probably wrap the corner. Then the next big thing is we're going to dig up the street, drop in the new water vault for the new service, which is another huge benchmark. And here's a little anecdote. I was talking to one of the masons on the other side of the building early Monday morning, and an older gentleman, and he was telling me that his grandfather worked on this school and was one of the installers of the original boilers, which they used a team of horses to bring in to the basement, which is now our WOW space and mechanical rooms. So it's always surprising to me how many people I bump into that are connected to this district because it's been here so long. So when we talk about institutions, this is definitely one that I and you should be proud of. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Chris. I think we have a video, and since Ed is not with us tonight, who will be presenting?
On it. I don't have his voice, but I will at least play a video.
Ed really has enjoyed going up to the roof and filming things from that vantage point. So that is the roof decking for the gym. The big crane that was setting the roof joists. There it is. These guys are something else. The iron workers. It's high and it's hot and dangerous. They do a great job. So we set these truss, or these joists, excuse me, over 2 mornings, 2 days. So overlook shot, they're doing some excavation and fill work down in the new courtyard. This is the stormwater detention area, so permeable pavers go over top of this, so all that stormwater that comes in from the street gets collected here and sits until it can filter through the ground. So what you see now is the inside of the offices on that side of the student services. Glass and aluminum storefront goes there, so we were looking into the offices from the behind. That's my buddy Ed doing some plumbing work. There's a shot of the new glass up on the students' alternative programs floor. This is now the basement. So you see there's no drywall. Once we get the lid on the gym, we can start putting drywall in down there. This is the wrestling room, cleaning up from the mechanical contractors. This is the wrestling room. The other side was the weight room. And also the storm shelter. Ed really likes the elevator shaft. Thanks, Ed, for those great videos.
Thank you for narrating, Chris.
Thank you.
Next is item 4.04, our SSD partnership agreement. Emily and Vince.
Hello again. I realize I didn't officially introduce myself. Thank you for giving me some time this evening. I'm Emily Pressman, the Director of Special Education. And my partner in collaboration, Vince Estrada, is going to be here to take over some statements as well. So I'm here tonight to present a condensed version of our partnership agreement. Attached, you have the complete partnership agreement from Special School District that we ask MRH and all of our partner districts to enter into with us. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the purpose behind it and what it looks like in practice. meet the federal law IDA requirements. And that gets broken down from the federal level down to the state level and then here at the local level for us. So the partnership agreement really ensures that this is in practice happening and outlines the components of how we are doing that together as a partnership. So we have our local plan of compliance with our state regulations that is outlined in what that looks like for the provision of special education services from child find, the suspicion of a student having a disability, through the qualification process and into the administration of services and supports for students.
One of the interesting things about the special education journey is how it starts so big. And I'm always appreciate our partnership with SSD because it starts big. Federal legislation goes to the state Office of Special Ed. They adopt a huge state compliance plan. It goes up all the special education. Every time I see the plan, I'm like, I'm so glad that it was SSD because it's huge. It's really tedious. Then they pull the partnership agreement from the state plan, and then we engage in our parts of it. And what it distills down to us is often a one-page general assurance document. So what starts out huge is a one-page commitment from us to be a good partner. So we have to be good partners in a few things. In terms of identifying and referring students, we have a very important role to play. Those are MRH kids, and we have a responsibility to identify and work in partnership with us to identify them and get the referral process on. We have a responsibility to implement the IEP. There's a lot of things that are done in the classroom that we have to be responsible for providing equitable resources, spaces, professional development, all those things. And in my many years at MRH, that's really improved significantly over the years. And that's what is on our part too. We have a full-time administrator now. We have full-time school psychs. We have full-time social workers. All that is a reflection of a really great partnership with SSD. So we'll sign this one-page document. So it starts out as this huge monstrosity, comes down to one page for us, but it's an important commitment for us to make with SSD.
So this is exactly what Mr. Estrada was just talking about in terms of where we start with that statute and regulation at the federal level. We move into our local level, which is the Missouri State Plan B, and then we go into our local compliance component. And we do, as he said, at Special School District, pull that out, summarize it, put it into that assurance statement. Certainly all of it is available in its entirety for everyone as well to review. So the partnership agreement really lies within the most local component of it, right, the Special School District and us as MRH. So the next couple of slides highlight some of the components of that partnership agreement. So as we've already talked about, the purpose of it is to increase our knowledge and awareness of expectations from both districts to ensure that we are, as Dr. McGee already said, going in the same direction and not fragmented in our purposes. Inclusion and collaboration. It also helps provide us with a monitoring tool to assess how our partnerships are performing, how our systems are performing together and working collaboratively. So we do have a quantifiable rubric that we work through twice a year in the fall and then in the summer to determine our needs, where we're performing as a partnership from the district level as well as at the building level. So there'll be another component that we talk about in terms of the principal coordinator collaboration tool. So that's something that I will engage in both at the district level with members of cabinet in terms of how we're performing at the district level, and then also at the building level with building principals in that role that I play both at the district level and at the building level. These are the 7 categories that are specifically outlined in the partnership agreement. So just to give a few examples of what some of those things might look like, some of the things are already things Mr. Estrada talked about in terms of staffing. That looks at both the hiring, developing, and evaluating of staff at all of those levels. Teaching, learning, and accountability is my partnership with Dr. McGee and the teaching and learning team in terms of, again, that professional development piece, as well as the components that are specific to special school district in terms of IEP compliance and components like that. The collaboration and responsibilities of resources, those are the tools that we're talking about here today, the general assurance document, the collaboration tool with principals and the coordinators, student services, data technology, transportation, and career and technical education, or CTE, are all components that are outlined in the plan and in the agreement. Some things that come up in data and technology are just ensuring that our staff have the same access, even though they are special school district employees. be our MRH employees, and we do a great job with our technology department ensuring our staff have access to everything that their general education counterparts have access to. Transportation is something that we contract together. Special School District provides our transportation for students that have a need for transportation as a related service. So as I shared already, the assessment and evaluation component exists with this. So it's a collaborative process in which we look at how we're performing, look at some of the actionable items that we need to focus on and develop more clearly and be more targeted in our approach in terms of growth as a partnership. So being here this evening is part of the acknowledgement of our Special School District Board of Ed and you all as the MRH Partner District Board of Ed. So this is a summary of the statements that we are agreeing to in signing this partnership agreement and acknowledging that we are entering into it together. Mr. Estrada's going to talk a little bit about our areas of focus.
Just a couple of things just to bring it home in terms of a couple of examples. There's many more about how we collaborate and work together on multi-tier systems of support, which we've been initiative that we've really been focusing on the last 2 or 3 years under the current leadership, Dr. Jameson's leadership, the rest of the team, with a full-time MTSS person that was paid for by SSD. It's a great example of that partnership. And for example, RCL CAD team that I mentioned last Tuesday, in that team there's 8 special school district staff members, social workers, our 2 school psychologists, and 4 teachers. And we're talking about MTSS, we're talking about tier 1, 2, 3 supports. We helped identify a screener together. We share best practices. Our school sites are full partners, not only in terms of evaluating students for special ed, but in terms of helping us problem solve and work with students. We're part of our community. Those are some great examples of MTSS where we get a lot of support and good partnership with special school districts. For example, we have 504 meetings, and SSD will consult with us with some of those students and provide some consultative support as needed. So there's really great work being done together in those tier 1, 2, 3 supports for kiddos. And the collaborative part in terms of evaluation, for example, really working with Ms. Dressman and the SSD leadership to kind of do joint kind of walkthroughs and look for us in the class, because we have to provide services. The vast majority of special ed services are provided in the class. Right? The vast majority of our students are in class most of the day, and they get their services there. So it makes sense for our principals to walk with Ms. Dressman and myself to kind of see what's happening in the classrooms, not only serve those students, but all the students in the class. So those are just a couple of examples of what we're doing.
Ms. Kreisman, can you share with the community what MTSS is?
Absolutely. So MTSS is multi-tier systems of supports for students. So it is working through what is universally available for all of our students and determining what additional or different supports or instructional practices might be needed for a student to continue to grow in their educational journey.
We had a meet today with our Mizzou partners. There were 8 districts there about MTSS, multi-tier systems of support. Emily's part of that team, or the person hired by SSD. Schweitzer was there. She's a great leader for us. I was there. Trying to do my best. This is kind of a great example of how we're working together.
So the next tool that I want to give you a brief overview on is the Principal Coordinator Collaboration Tool. So here in MRH, we have the opportunity that I serve in both roles that Special School District identifies, both the Director of Special Education and then what other districts have as area coordinators who are at the building level in terms of supporting that instruction. So I am thrilled to have an opportunity to be looking at it from both perspectives. And so part of that is that I will meet monthly with building principals, and we will conduct some classroom visits, and we will also be looking at student and staff performance data as we need to. And this collaboration tool that SSD has put together with input from folks in those roles will help us assess our partnership and where we are in terms of the effectiveness of our collaboration. So there are key components. If you want to go down one more slide after me, thank you. So these are the big buckets of the tool. So it will look at the effectiveness of our collaboration. It helps facilitate collaboration. It gives some targeted questions for us to consider, criteria for measuring the implementation, as well as coming to consensus and celebrating those successes that we have together. So those will be the big areas that I will be working with and supporting principals on, and then that partnership agreement is looking at it more from that district level as well. And I know Mr. Estrada is going to give an update on some enrollments. Additionally, what you have attached is also a flyer that has data in terms of students receiving special education services right now in MRH. So we have some coming reporting measures, that some due dates for reports that will be coming out. So I anticipate there may be an update to that as we update enrollment in terms of students receiving services. But that is a pretty accurate depiction of where we are in terms of students receiving services here today. What questions can I answer?
I'm curious, the implementation of the collaboration tool and its activities is new to us, correct?
Yes.
Is that because it's new to SSD's programming, or it's new to us as a district? It's already existed in SSD.
It's a great question. So the principal coordinator collaboration tool has been in our district for about 6 years, but it has been revisited and adjusted and updated for a lot of our diversity, equity, and inclusion practices that we've gone through. So most recently, over the last, I would say, 2 years, it hasn't been at the forefront of our work. So it's definitely been revisited and refreshed.
In looking at the by the numbers document, which is helpful, and I know that was a new addition from SSD within the past few years, I'm curious about if we can get some information maybe in the future about early childhood special services being provided, since I know, we include, pre-K in our work, but, it doesn't necessarily show up in the way that this is disaggregated. Would be interested to know how those first steps kinds of services are being provided, because I think that's an important component of the collaboration between the district and SSD. So that's a request for future information. I also have a deep appreciation for our partnership with SSD. I think this is an incredible service that St. Louis County residents have access to. I think it was very progressive thinking when this district was developed, 50 plus years ago. The level of expertise around specific needs that SSD is able to, aggregate for all districts is really critical, and I'm very appreciative of this service for our students. I continue to struggle, and I think many folks do, with the pairing of our special education services with our career and technical education services, which I think is also a service that is better provided in the aggregate for the county. I am noticing that only 23 students from MRH are accessing South Tech services right now. I'd be curious to know how that compares to other districts, and really, I believe I'm correct in my understanding that these are primarily students who are typically developing kind of not IEP students that participate in those programs. Is that correct?
It is open to all students.
Okay.
So there are students that both receive services and students that don't participate in South Tech, yes, and
Okay.
the various programs there.
Okay, and I do think that I'm excited to see in the partnership agreement, some additional opportunities for our deepening of relationships between the CTE work, both at our high school and with South Tech, because South Tech doesn't just do mechanics and hairdressing or things that I would think of from when I was in high school many years ago, but the idea around tech entrepreneurship and things like that is really exciting as we move forward with our apprenticeship work as well. So again, just request for really leaning into that aspect of the partnership, and I know we've got principals here and things like that too that will be responsible with you for implementing that.
So there, just to add to part of that, I am having conversation with Dr. Keenan, the superintendent of special school district, to expand that while it is open for gen ed and special education students who are being supported. There is criteria required in order for students to gain access, and that's where I struggle when we begin to talk about equity and opening doors. So there are requirements for student attendance, but if you think about a student who may have some mental health challenges and may not necessarily come to school as frequent, that may be something that prohibits them from participating. So for me, there's a challenge, but there is also an appeal process for that. But I have also had the conversation in regards to the programming that they offer sometimes lends itself to a student who may do well in a space like that versus being in a traditional high school setting. So I am nudging on that. We are having conversation about that as a means to grow that number.
And I think we probably also have some look that we need to take on our end. I recall a student who came and spoke in public comment multiple times last year to encourage us or to continue to look at our prereqs offerings for the variety of thriving wage jobs that can be, gotten out of high school with some of the credentials that are available through South Tech. So
there's also some master schedule work that we need to do as well, just basically thinking about start of school time and when students actually enter back. So we've been having conversation, Ms. Huffman and I, in regards to students who attend, they come back, and then their class has already started. So they are actually missing some time from a core content standpoint. So as we talk about beginning and end of school times, there are things that surface that we may not necessarily know exist. So the need to kind of look at that coupled with programming around that as well to ensure that students have access and also that we can be creative in the offerings that we have.
There are half-day programs, as you know, for
Yeah.
juniors and seniors. The travel time is a decent distance. It's a good half hour.
Yeah.
So on a master schedule, it's challenging. The students in the morning are not negatively impacted because they start so darn early. It's not County Tech. We're able to take a few more, maybe an extra class here. The afternoon students are the ones that are a little more schedule.
Gotcha.
You're right, it's a pretty robust program. There's a student that walks church scrubs, and I call her a nurse, and she loves that, and she's going to be a nurse.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's really a great program. About 23 students go. That's about 1 out of every 10 juniors and seniors.
Sure.
And we also have some CP certified classes at MRH High School, which we try to kind of, as a way to kind of continue to kind of give out kids an opportunity.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a matter of making more visible, the stuff that's already happening. I think it's, continues to be in my opinion, an underutilized gem in our county.
I know there has been some conversation with Ms. Huffman of potentially adding the offerings from the tech school into the course catalog for selections. I don't know where we are with that, but she has.
I think that's in the partnership agreement too, so, yeah.
And I also made a shift. This role previously was on the SEL curriculum action team with Mr. Estrada, and we've made the move for me to be on the college and career readiness curriculum action team, so that we can make sure that we are, using that partnership and our resources together to the greatest extent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vince, I think you're still up. We'll have our enrollment update.
This is actually one presentation I'm the most familiar with enrollment. I've been doing this presentation for many years, since 2005. I always enjoy kind of taking into these numbers. Just to kind of talk about a few more details. These are preliminary numbers. Our official count, our membership count is the last one in September. But it's close enough to pull to kind of give us a sense of where we're at in enrollment. I'll come back in October with our official numbers. These are important dates. And Emily kind of referred to as December is the big reporting date for special education. So while the flyer we received give us kind of a sense of where we're at, we'll have much more accurate numbers by December, January to share with you guys where we're at in terms of numbers, students with disabilities that we're serving. The other big number, which you know is the last Wednesday, January, is where our premium dysfunction numbers become official for the year. But our official enrollment count, that'll be kind of sealed in perpetuity, will be the last Wednesday in September. So we work pretty hard to make sure that we know who's in our spaces by that date. So the first slide kind of tracks our overall enrollment. For the last, I always kind of go through a little bit of retrospective. I do the last 7 or 8 years, and I go back to 07, 08, so kind of like to kind of get a sense of overall numbers. And again, we are much larger than we used to be 10, 12 years ago, that's for sure. For the first time in 3 years, we had 12 straight years of enrollment. increases, and we had 3 years of a slight decline during COVID. But this year, we've got an increase again. We went from 1386 to 1403, and those numbers won't change much, so it's pretty good. So overall, we're still pretty robust enrollment. Again, back in the mid-2000s, we were below 1,000, which was historically low. I also kind of identified a big jump in 2017-18 because we did move second grade over to the ECC, which did increase enrollment ever so slightly. Enough for kids that are in that space. But that's kind of give you some overall numbers. I pulled that from Power School, so we'll kind of do some digging. That kind of gives you some trend data. Next slide talks about cohort analysis, grade level analysis. This is comparing last year's kindergarten to this year. So there's some fluctuation there that are sometimes hard to explain. Sometimes we have large cohorts, sometimes we have small cohorts. We typically graduate smaller senior classes than we bring on kindergarten, which often account for the change and increase in our overall enrollment. But this is important in terms of staffing. There's some pretty big jumps. Like, I'm sure that you'll notice that our second grade is much bigger this year, plus 15. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. So anyway, so this just kind of gives you a sense of some overall changes there. But overall, at the end of the day, when you kind of account for all the fluctuations, it's a plus 2% increase overall. I found the next slide the more interesting one, which is the cohort analysis. So that kind of compares, so for the first graders, you know, like from year to year, right? So last year's first grade, like when they were in kindergarten last year, and first grade this year. So, and here you see much less of a fluctuation within the cohorts themselves. So last year's kindergarten class had 110 on that count date. On September 14th, 113 first graders. So there's not as much fluctuation within the class. A little bit with 8th and 9th, but not in 10th, but not shockingly large numbers. So there's a lot more stability within our cohorts. So that's kind of feels like pretty kind of steady to me. And again, an overall fluctuation of plus 4. You're thinking, this, well, how do we have why we have plus 27? That's because we graduated 80 some odd seniors, brought in 105 kindergarten. The next slide talks a little bit about where kids came from. This is a question that my superintendent said he'd be interested in this. So I did a deep dive in terms of looking at, I looked at grades 1 through 12. A lot of kindergartens come from preschool and child care programs. So that's not as, most it's not important, but it doesn't give some consistency to it, you know? So I looked at first grade through 12th grade transfer. The vast majority, a third, come from within St. Louis County, public schools here. Out of state was surprisingly large, 16%, St. Louis City and the charter schools. If you combine St. Louis City and charter schools, it's about 20 kids. That's a pretty decent percentage from the city. All the charter schools are primarily St. Louis City, private schools. You see the numbers. Homeschool numbers a little bit higher in terms of transfer. We've had a little fluctuation prior to COVID on kids going and coming back from homeschool, but that number, we did have a little bit of bump of kids returning from the homeschool situation. And then, you know, smaller numbers from international students, outstate, and St. Charles County. Under international students, I want to point out, we have students that come to us from St. Louis Public Schools, from the Naheed, Chapman, New American Academy. It's a fantastic school. They are definitely international students, but they're transferring from St. Louis City Public Schools. They often land up at the early childhood center and the elementary school. And they're definitely new to this country, but that's straight from other countries. So I'll have 2 students that came from other countries. So that just kind of gives you a sense of where people came from and so forth. I'll have more information to present in October. Look at some McKinney mental numbers, hardship labor numbers a little bit. I did a kind of sneak peek on that. So anyway, any questions I can answer for you so far, and again, I'll be back next month with some more official numbers.
The increase in the pre-K numbers, is that an increase in kids sharing like there's like a lot more part-time preschoolers or just a lot more preschoolers?
I have a great fortune of presenting this while Dr. Moyet is actually my knowledge of preschool. It's the area I know the least about.
Sure, it's not right. It's not official, right?
We were kind of ramping up our preschool numbers. I don't know, Jill,
our numbers have gone up. Our 5 full day numbers have gone up drastically. Our spot sharing has gone down drastically along with half day programming. So it'll be interesting for us to really take a deep dive into preschool enrollment and look at this year what our current needs are in preschool, because they've definitely shifted over the last few years.
Preschool numbers are always interesting to look at because you have to, it's almost like a series of snapshots. Like on Wednesdays, how many kids they, but they do some half-day programs.
I mean, we have almost as many preschoolers as middle schoolers right now, which is pretty big deal.
And you know what's cool though, because there's 2 grade levels, and that kind of makes sense in some ways. There's 3 and 4 year olds, there's 2 grade levels in middle school. That's kind of Maybe we can have some robust numbers. The kindergarten cohort was kind of small this year. Who knows why?
Just keep in mind, they're not all there every single
Sure,
day.
sure,
I like to
yes.
say I have 530 kids, which is true, but they're not all in season.
Right, and not all
Right.
there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, thank you for showing the data where the students transfer from. Do we have any data where our students transfer
Yes.
to?
I'll bring the next one.
Okay, good.
That's sometimes lags. With high school and middle school students, we typically know because those older students that we have, we get record requested, especially during state, because of the Safe Schools Act, because we've required that for 20 years or so. When they're younger, like if a parent of a first grader moves to Virginia and walks in with every document, they're not going to send us a record request.
Right.
So we have to kind of sometimes figure out what it's based on. But we're small enough, we are pretty mindful about that. We don't typically remove a student from our roles until we know where they went.
Okay.
I was working with the middle school team the other day, and they worked hard on attendance. There were a couple kids that didn't know where they went. So we kept them on our rolls. We called Philadelphia, we called some cities and found out where they were at. No problem, we were able to kind of
Awesome.
transfer them out and update their attendance. But we're smart enough to do it, I think, well and not lose track of kids. We fill out the application. So I'll have that information next month.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks to Dr. McGee for driving it up.
Thank you, Vince. Item 4.06, our summer school program evaluation with Dr. Maxwell and Dr. McGee.
All right, Dr. Maxwell and I are going to tag team this one, so I'll let him start out and then transition to me as we move through.
Thank you for being here to share just some of our outcomes from our summer school program. I do want to start out before we get too far into it, just with some thank you students. This is a large just undertaking, and it takes a full village to do that. So it's easy for me to just look around the room and give some thank yous. First of all, I definitely want to thank Dr. McGee just for his guidance and support and helping us make some significant transitions in our summer school program. Chris Holder helping us with the financial side of it. Dr. Chandra Phillips helping us with the staffing side of that too. We also have John in the back and Abby Irwin with the technology that we use for that too. Thank you to the board also just for helping us give some approval to some of the changes that we made with that. Dr. Dietrich, he definitely helped us with transportation, food services, he helped us with custodial work with that. Vince helping us with our nurses. Emily and Ben Gleason for helping us with our summer school SSD partnership that we have. And then definitely, I want to thank the teachers, all the teachers that put in a lot of significant work, not only getting ready for summer school, but just implementing our summer school program. And then finally, just want to thank our families for entrusting their children with us during the summer school program. So lots of thank yous before we get into just a review of that program. So just to remind you, these were our goals that we had set just about a year ago for what we wanted to accomplish this year with our summer school. Our first goal was to really look at, by the second semester, develop an annual procedure for initializing, planning, and carrying out our summer school program. We did complete that. The second goal was, by second semester, investigate and develop a proposal to implement summer school module and or resources that either profit the district or break even with the expenditures. We are very excited to share that we have met that goal. And then finally, by second semester, to collaborate with the MRH high school building leadership on our credit acquisition and credit recovery programs for our high school students. So to get in just to one of those goals that you have that we set forth was really to work on our budgeting for our summer school program. And you can see the trend over the years is that we wanted to always provide a robust summer school program, but we also knew that it was cutting into what we expended, our expenditures for that. And so with Dr. McGee, that was something that we really wanted to take a hard look at and look at how we could change that model so that we could at least break even. And knowing this was the first year of it, you can see that we significantly met that, exceeded probably some of our expectations. So we're happy to see that we did net a $27,000 for the district, which we will continue to look at what we can do within that summer school program. We don't necessarily want to make a profit out of our summer school program, but this will help us understand what we can do in the future to provide that robust program for our students. This is just a review of our enrollment. You'll see that our enrollment did slightly decrease, particularly in our kindergarten through 6th grade. And then it did slightly increase for our 7th through 8th grade and 9th through 12th grade with that too. I think some of what we looked at, kind of looking at our enrollment, with some of the significant changes that we made this year, and getting some approval and just a better understanding of how we wanted to move forward, that did delay our enrollment timeline a little bit. And so I think we did lose some of our kindergarten through 6th grade to some other summer programs that are around the area. So we hope to move that timeline forward and be able to capture them earlier this year. This is on the high school side of it. This is our credit program, credit recovery and credit acquisition program. So you can see over the last few years, particularly since we came out of the pandemic and we made it into a mostly virtual program, is that really opened up some doors for some of our students, and especially our high school students that are working during the summertime or have other commitments. The flexibility with an online program really allowed more students to be able to participate, and so we continue to increase this year. Almost 60 credits were earned throughout our summer program. And if we break down those credits, it'll just kind of show you how those credits were earned. So we have the credit acquisition. The two main courses that we had for credit acquisition was personal finance and our PE course. And I want to just let you know, our PE course, yes, it was virtual, but they also wear a Garmin watch. They are doing a lot of physical activity. For those of you that knew anybody that took that course, it was a rigorous course during the summer. But you can see with our credit acquisition, we had 69 credits, or we enrolled our students in 69 credits, and we had our students complete 85.5% of those credits. And so those can be either students that never started the course, or it can be students that started the course and then decided for whatever reason to not finish that course. On our credit recovery, we enrolled students in 80 courses, and we had 77.5% of our students complete those courses. So overall, that gave us a completion of 79.9, almost 80% of our courses were completed for those that were enrolled in that. One of the big things that we definitely want to look at in our kindergarten through 8th grade program is just the success of our program. Is this providing educational benefit to our students? And so this data here really helps to answer that question for us. It's not totally completely able to answer that question, but it provides a little bit of insight into just what our program does. A lot of the research around summer school programs talks about that your main goal, especially for our summer program, with our timeline that we have, is that we want to avoid a summer slip, so avoid a regression. We might not make significant gains during the summertime, but if we can help prevent any regression with our students, then we're moving in the right direction with what we're doing with our program. Just to point out some of the data up there, these are our current grade levels, so students currently in kindergarten, currently in 1st grade, et cetera. So with our current kindergarten students, there isn't any pre-assessment data that we have from preschool that can carry into what we have our data for this year. And so you'll see that we don't have any data there. Same thing with our 7th graders. They transitioned from taking the STAR test in 6th grade. They take the NWEA test in 7th grade. And so it's really hard to kind of match up and show just how that data changed. So for that, we just don't have any solid data to show with that. But what this really shows, just to go back, is we're looking at just the change from what students scored in the spring to what students have scored this fall. One of the next steps that we would like to take with that is to really not only look at our summer school students, but to look at our entire population, to be able to kind of look at a comparison between students that took summer school and just what were their gains or losses, and then what was the rest of the population. So just give a little bit of comparison. We just haven't had the opportunity to pull all of that data together because we're just wrapping up some of our testing window with that. But you can see that really with both math and with reading is that we did see actually gains in our students that were scored from the spring to the fall. So if we're looking at trying to avoid that regression, then I would say that this data shows that at least this part of the data shows that we did meet that too. You can also see just on the right-hand side is that is our attendance. So that's something that we want to continue to look for opportunities to continue to increase that. But this just shows the average daily attendance for the different grade levels that we have. getting to just over 71% average daily attendance for our students. We also, at the end of the summer program, we did survey our families just to get feedback from them as far as what their experiences were, or at least what they heard about their own children's experiences at summer school. This is on a scale out of 4.0, and so you can see that this survey asked things about just what they were hearing about their child's experience at summer school, the enrollment process. It also asked about just the incentive program that we had for the students. Also just asked about the educational benefit that the families felt like they found for their students, asked about the transportation system, and also just whether they would recommend this program to other families within their district. And you can see that overall, we were above that 3.0 line, so lots of positive feedback from our families. We also surveyed our kindergarten through 8th grade staff that were teaching summer school, and asked their just input and feedback around things about just curriculum materials, asked about just the core courses, the elective courses that were offered, asked also teachers about the incentive program, and then asked about the summer school site administrators, and then finally just about their overall experience with teaching summer school. And again, you can see that on the 4-point scale that we had most of our responses in these categories were overall favorable.
How many staff were there for summer?
We had 15 staff and
okay.
14 responses.
Great, thank you.
What is the student incentive program?
So our student incentive program, so we partnered with Summer Journey for our summer school curriculum resource. And part of that we paid them for was a pretty positive, robust incentive program. A lot of the incentive program was focused on attendance. And so they were giving out gift cards, we were giving out daily incentive prizes. We had the prize card that came around, Squishmallow was very popular.
God.
As a
Gotta love the
summer school
Squishmallows.
Administrator, that was our favorite time of the day, was to walk around with the prize card. But then also at the end of the summer school, students that met certain attendance goals, they got their mail, a gift card mailed to them for different amounts depending on just what their attendance was. To just look at, we also followed up with just our teaching staff to look into just dig into that data a little bit more and get some more qualitative data with that too. So some of the positive definitely reflects a lot of what we saw in that, talking about they felt like they had a lot of good resources for the curriculum. They felt like the incentive program was good. They liked the flexibility of having a curriculum resource and also some flexibility within that as far as how to provide that resource and what they could do during their class time. And then one of the ones that really stood out was that having income in kindergarten. They really felt like that was a positive to give them a school experience before they actually start in kindergarten at PCC. Some of the suggestions for improvement, one of the ones that really stood out was it was a long day for our teaching staff. They taught from 8 to 3:30, so that was a lot of time that they're putting in during their summertime. So that was a long day for the staff, and they also felt like that was a long day during the summertime for our students too. They also felt like we still allowed our families to have some flexibility during the summer, and so we allowed families to decide if they're going to attend the whole program or they attend week 1, week 2, week 3. So some of that flexibility did impact what teachers felt like they could do with the students because there was just kind of lack of continuity with what they would do with that. But one of the things they also talked about was just having more playing time prior to summer school. We had, as we know with our calendar, we ended late in June, and so we had basically one turnaround day and then we were starting summer school. And that was definitely a challenge for our teachers, but they did an incredible job doing that. We hope to be able to build more into our program with that too. We also talked about just having a little bit more differentiation and intervention within the core areas. And I think just getting to know the new curriculum resource, now that we know that, that will allow us to better be able to plan for that in the future. And then one of the things too is just to continue to provide teachers with upfront information about our students. So having that quick turnaround from the end of the school year to the start of summer school, some of our teachers felt like they would want to have more information about the students that were walking into their classroom before they walked into their classroom. And that's something that we can definitely continue to provide for our teachers so they're ready. A lot of this really just reiterates just what we talked about with that. So these are just kind of stating some of the points of the data that we just talked about. So at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Chris to talk about moving forward.
Yeah, so obviously you saw in many of the slides there's opportunities for improvement. We're highlighting those as we begin to implement our program for next summer. I'll be honest to say that I've already presented a proposal to COA for next year. I already have a timeline drafted of what happens each month between starting September 1st on through the actual enrollment in summer school starting fiscal year 24. So that's the next upcoming summer school. So we're already thinking there even before this presentation happens. So we have 3 goals. We want to enhance the programming by developing that proposal to implement summer school models and resources. And of course, we want to at least cover the expenditures. So I think we can tweak some of the hours, some of the minutes, some of the opportunities to make sure that we don't come out with as much of a profit, that we get it, right size it, if you will. And identify and deploy a consistent pre-post assessment, because I really want to be able to say what students are walking in and what students are walking away with. And then finally, increase that daily student attendance in our summer program, because 71%, while it's okay, it's not what we're hoping for. And we've got some strategies we're seeking to deploy with that to make that better. All right, questions that you might have for us?
Can we go back to page 7?
No idea what page.
Oh, go forward. Keep going. Stop. Can you help me read this graph? From what I'm looking at, that says that grade 3 kiddos in math decreased in their knowledge. It also says that grade 6 kiddos decreased in their knowledge of math, and grade 8. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
What do we think, aside from, I'm well aware that while I completely appreciate the flexibility of summer school, if you have kids coming in and out from week to week, day to day, you're not going to learn some stuff. So that,
Yeah,
I have
there's that, and there's also July and August. So please keep in mind that the 2 data points that we're comparing are May and September.
Yeah. Okay.
So recognize that life does happen outside of this 17-day program that could impact the outcome that we have there, which is why the goal that I have is I want to measure the program. So having a pre-post assessment that happens within that window gives us more accurate data of, is this program doing what we designed it to do?
So reading is -48 from May to September for first graders?
There's a change.
I'll kind of explain that a little bit, because kind of noted that in there with the early lit. So, and Dr. Lit can speak to this too a little bit more too, but our kindergartens take really early literature assessment, and then a lot of our kindergartens, as they transition to first graders, then take a reading assessment. So you are not necessarily comparing apples to apples, because some of the students that took early lit are not doing that again in first grade. So that's why I think when you look at that data, you're going to see a larger change, because you're not comparing apples to apples.
Right. And in all honesty, there's a large part of me that wanted to omit this screen because of the fact that it is misleading. Yeah. However, we have got to attach academic data to this program. So we are doing our best to tell the story, and recognizing that there's some there's just some inaccuracies or inadequacies, if you will.
Yeah, and I think if you went back and looked at summer school reports from previous years, you would see these same sorts of like slight decreases in some areas too. Yeah.
Tell me, remind me please, what the revenue is. Is it a fee for service? Are we getting some state funding? Where are we getting revenue from?
Yeah, so really a couple years ago, when I jumped on board with the summer school program, we were coming out of the pandemic. And so I think looking at that, not only were we taking down plexiglass, but we were also looking at just how we kind of take down some barriers to access to summer school. And so we knew that we wanted to be able to provide a robust program for more students. We transitioned from a fee-based program where all families were paying for it, not all families, most families were paying for our summer school program, to what we transitioned to last year is we were using some of that ESSER fund that we had to be able to supplement some of that payment, to this year with being able to reshape what our summer program looks like, we're able to collect full ADA for our students based on attendance. And so the expenditure for us is really through just the curriculum resource that we have, and then salaries, and then transportation.
I was going to say, transportation's free.
Right. So being able to collect ADA, that's where, the Chris's over here, we're really doing a lot of kind of mathematical wizard to try and, figure out what is that cut point as far as how many hours do we need to have to be able to break even with the number of students that we would enroll in that.
And is
So
that
it's very
with the
much
help
more
of our
like
federal
a traditional
programs?
school year.
No. Were we able to do that with the help of our?
It's just that our summer school program previously was structured much more like camp than like school.
100%.
So we were not.
That is exactly
we
the
were
answer.
not eligible for.
Correct. That is the best
reimbursement.
description
Yeah.
of the shift that we've made. It is school.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is not camp. We are learning academic content in fun and engaging ways, but we are reading and doing math and learning social studies and science.
And so we have to follow DESI guidelines as far as what a summer school program looks like.
Yeah.
to then be able to play.
I mean, the credit recovery has always been, school, but the K-8 program has been more camp-like than.
And as far as funding
Just
goes,
moving forward, are we going to still have the attendance thing where people can kind of pick and choose, I guess, when they attend, like the weeks that they attend or whatever?
I do, and then Chris speaks a little bit. I think the flexibility is nice for some of our families, and I think we could lose some of our families if we don't allow that. But I think we also do need to look at how we prioritize families as far as who will get first access to it, and really prioritize those that can have continuity as far as some of that.
We'd like to look at it like a puzzle. When you've got 4 blocks, how can I fill that 4 blocks to get a 4 out of 4? So our attendance percentage is as close to 100% as possible for the number of kids that are enrolled.
and those attendance numbers, the summer term is the beginning of the next school year, not the end of the prior, which is a little bit of a brain shift. But those attendance minutes, just like the regular term, were paid on the amount of attendance that we accumulate. So those numbers are mixed in, so that's why it's important for us to do those careful calculations to figure out what our actual revenues are that we can attribute directly to the summer school.
I want to note that I think this is a big leap forward for us as a district. I think that distinction between camp and school may have been lost on some of our families, and I think you're right that kind of not being able to promote the program till later in the spring probably impacted attendance, because a lot of families these days are making those plans in February and in March. I think alongside being able to promote this earlier, making that distinction very clear, I think would, I did hear a lot of like, what is this summer journey? This is different from museum camp. Right, it's not a camp, it is summer school. I think this is the direction we need to be going. This is how we're going to best serve our kids, and making it free is absolutely essential. So I want to commend the work that you all have done over the past couple of years to really elevate the summer school experience for our district.
And also, I like the proposed goal for the 2023 planning, especially for attendance. And I'm just trying to think, when you plan for summer school, do we have like an open house for parents so they can understand and go over the proposal, how important it is for their child to excel, that this is important, especially attendance, being there. So if they are trying to plan a trip, something to get in front of, like, okay, we know we can't take a trip in June or July because our child needs to be in school, the communication piece of it.
Yeah, part of our work is to identify with our winter benchmarking, which is typically right around December, January, is when everything, all the dominoes start to fall. We've identified some students that might be our target families to participate, and we start advertising, inviting, encouraging, supporting the participation, because we would love to really have as many kids participate in this program as possible.
Just a couple other notes. DESE just sent out a grant proposal called Close the Gap Grant for families, $1,500 to qualify. You actually have to be 185% below the federal poverty line. But what's interesting about the grant, and it's a partnership through Odyssey, the Odyssey platform, and so I sent this information out to building principals, to our communications department, to put it into their newsletters, but also to identify a person to help remove barriers if a family member is trying to sign up for it. But the funds can be used for instructional resource materials, tutoring, academic day or summer camp, computer equipment, internet connectivity, which we have hotspots, so I would definitely say that's not an item, before and after school care, and then also course fees and textbooks, online access for academic gaps or subscriptions. So I think about our seniors who are seeking to go into post-secondary, they can use it for college preparation for ACT and SAT. So it's a great opportunity. There's also art enrichment, so it's not necessarily just for academics. So I did send this information out, and I'm hoping for it to go out. I also want to highlight something that Dr. McGee probably was tiptoeing around. Senate Bill 319 does actually require students who are reading below a certain grade level to participate in a mandatory manner in summer school, or else they, the child is supposed to be retained. Now, we know the research around retention, and it's not beneficial, but when we think about the students who should be at summer school, the question and conversation that Dr. McGee and I have been having is, do we have the right students in the seat? And so for me, if we're talking about that small subset of students who are participating, I look at the data regularly, and I would say the answer is no. So we also have to think about nudging those parents whose students that would benefit to actually participate as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.01, our finance program evaluation.
Okay, this topic is a little less exciting than construction change orders and construction reports, but nevertheless, it's an important one. So this is the program evaluation for the Business Services Department, and we chose grants, tracking, and management. And you might say, wait a second, just a few months ago, we heard a federal program evaluation. Well, we are partners, we work hand in hand. As a matter of fact, we're meeting tomorrow as a team to go over this year's grants and some of the changes that have occurred. So we thought we would take a look at the gymnastics that is required to track and maintain and report on these grants. Because anytime you get money, there is a layer of accountability, and that accountability is more stringent on the federal and state level than it is perhaps on the local level or the regional level. Our auditors take a look. It has to be to the penny. You don't get to round, it's to the penny. So here's our background. We do receive federal, state, regional grants. They are critical to fund initiatives for our students. Right now, we track those. Of course, we use our finance and accounting system for the transactions, but we do have to track those data through manual means such as spreadsheets, which we do. Our FedPro coordinator, Stephanie Bouchard, does a great job of sharing out through a Google Sheet to all involved parties. I was scrolling through it today, and there's 20-plus tabs on this spreadsheet, so it gets a little ridiculous to get through all of that. It is time-consuming. It is prone to errors and inconsistencies. Now, that's not to say that we don't correct it, but there is a lot of time and effort from everyone in the department, including payroll, for business services, plus at times Chris, and his assistant Phoebe, and Stephanie, our FedPro coordinator. There's a lot of people involved, and it's critical that we're all on the same page at all times. So our purpose here is to assess the state of our current grants management, and then take a count, just a hard count of what we have, look for areas that we can improve on, and there's always areas to improve, even if we thought we were doing a fantastic job. And then if there are any systems recommendations that we can make, we'll do so at the end. So these are just some of the grants that we do receive. This is a very small number. We do receive 20-plus major grants, and I expect as the longer Stephanie's here, the more that she earns her keep through finding more and more grants. She goes after the big ones, she goes after the little small ones too. And that's important because every dollar has to be tracked, and we need a system perhaps to do that, because that $300,000 in annual funding, it's tricky, especially with the federal grants. It's dynamic. They move over they don't give you an allocation, and that's what it is. It changes plus or minus as the year goes on. So it's even more critical that we have a consistent way to track and manage these grants. So again, she manages the reporting. We're all involved in making sure. We've spent the last 2 days on the accounting side, making sure that all of last year's grants are accounted for to the penny. And if any transactions are missing, we have to make those adjustments. It does require a lot of meetings, emails, and multiple systems are involved. I can't tell you that we're not going to have a lot of meetings still, because there's a lot of things to talk about, but I'm hopeful that those meetings can be more productive and that we don't have to spend so much time compiling data, because the work often is duplicative and it does require manual synchronization, which speaks to the error-prone bullet point from a slide before. So here is the recommendation. We found there is a grants tracking or grants accounting module in Alio, now called Link. It will give us the centralized tracking. It'll enhance the oversight. Anybody involved can have access to this module and see what's going on. And if not for the purposes of entering information, at least for consuming that information and running reports on it. The quality of the data I expect to be better, definitely more efficient, and it will reduce the risk on compliance. Now, I will say that when we turn our data in for reporting to the state and also to our auditors, it is clean and it is precise, and if it's not, we fix it. However, we're hopeful that spinning up this module will help us do that in a more efficient, effective way.
Is there a grant for the module?
It's built into the program, so that's the other thing. We don't have to pay anything additional to use it. And it's a relatively simple module to spin up. One of the coolest features, I think, is we go through the configuration part, which is the first. Well, before this, we have to have a little meeting and make sure everyone knows what they're going to do. But we can attach our documents. So one of the big things is we have to collect the purchase orders, the requisitions, the receipts, the checks, all of that documentation has to be collected. We can now attach it to the module so that it's all contained in one place. Now, of course, we have to make all this happen. And it is a super busy time of year, but it is a relatively simplistic module, and I have high hopes that we can get this thing spun up in a reasonable period of time. So we're going to develop those procedures, assign roles and responsibilities to all involved parties. We have to create the reports, which sounds daunting, but it's really not. We just have to look at our needs, then develop the reports to fit them. Then, of course, train anybody that needs to be a part of this, figure out what go live looks like, set that date, and then we go. And then beyond that, it's just a matter of making sure that we're continually looking at this program, making sure that it's doing what we want it to do, and if not, make adjustments or abandon it altogether. But I'm hopeful that this is going to at least allow us to take a huge step forward in how we've been tracking and managing these grants in the past. Do you have any questions?
Just a comment, as a former federal grant writer, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you seeing staff's needs and addressing them, because this is, I'm sure, very overdue.
It's a lot. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I like spinning up systems. I've spent a big part of my career doing it, and this gives us a little bit of an opportunity to get in there and fine-tune things for the needs of MRH.
We have no other questions. We'll move on to 5.02, our FY24 August financial statements.
Okay, here we go. I combined them so we could save the transition time. Here's the breakout, here's the breakout of our revenue. You can see that our state, federal, which along with summer school funding and regular term funding through our attendance, and there's also grants mixed in there. But you can see that 80% of that funding is local, which is our preschool tuition, our Discover Club tuition, also food sales to students, But the biggest portion of that is our local property taxes that are assessed and paid by our community, which we are eternally grateful for. So at the end of August, we were right around 1.2 million, which is just under 5% of our budget. It is higher. We submitted one of our federal programs grant applications at the end of the fiscal year, so it did not come until the new fiscal year. So that's just a timing. You've heard me talk about timing before. It's just a matter, since we're cash-based, we have to report the revenue and the period in which it was received. Moving on to the expenditures, you can see that 77% is dedicated to salaries and benefits, and the breakout for the rest is there. Salaries and benefits are tracking as we would expect. It's one of our largest expenditures, so it's one that we keep a really close eye on. We use position control and have been for about 5-6 years now, and that's done a good job of helping keep those budgets in line so that we have a very clear picture of what our revenue, or excuse me, our salary and benefit expenditures look like over time, and we get better at it every single year. This is probably the best year so far, and I expect the following year to be even better. Capital purchases, we're just under 16, over 15.5% there, and right around where we have been in prior years. Overall, we're right a little over $3 million, which is comparable to the prior year. Cash flow, we're starting to get in that period of time where we're starting to see our actual cash in banks balances dwindle a little bit. As you've heard me say before, our first large or sizable tax receipts don't come in until mid to end December. So this is where we start doing the nail biting, but I can assure you that we do have sufficient cash balances to stem that period of time. But right now, if you saw our balance sheet, you would see more money going out the door than coming in the door. But that is typical for this time of year. Here is our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. You can see that that is down. These are planned expenditures due to either staffing or programmatic changes, and also related to MSIP 6 and the additional scrutiny that they will be applying as we move into that cycle. Oh, this is important too. Unaudited ending fund balance. So we are right now currently in audit for the fiscal year 23. The field work will begin in early to mid-October, and at some point this will say audited fund balance as opposed to unaudited fund balance. But right now it could move, so that's a little bit of a warning to you as the auditors go in and move some of our expenses and revenues around. This could shift just a little bit, but I'm confident that our tracking has been consistent over the past year and don't expect any major changes there. Any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you, Chris.
Very well. Thank you.
We'll move on to item 6.01, in-board communications. And again, welcome our new student advisor to the board. In board docs, you'll see the list of all of the principal advisory leadership board members with our liaisons to the board, Abraham and Katie as an alternate when Abraham is unable to attend. We've also included the administrative procedure in board docs for everyone to review. Dr. Jamieson, what else can you share with us about this?
Thank you. I'm super excited to finally have a student rep for our board and also for our community, meaning the school community. But the other piece of that is not visible is that each individual school actually has their own advisory board. And so the reps that you met, in addition to the president and vice president, will be engaging with them as they prepare to present their items aligned to the strategic plan. In addition, the board at the high school will have an opportunity to do some learning and onboarding, and we will be providing them with Robert's Rules of Order, so they still will have to have agendas. They will also still be in the process of identifying their secretary and treasurer. So we are really excited to hear the voice of our students as we talk about advocacy, as well as continue to support the needs of each building based on the perspective of students. I will like to highlight and lift out the process that Ms. Huffman went through, as well as the time and effort that each of the students actually put into their application. So whether they decided to submit a video, to submit a paper application, they had the choice to do that. And I do want to thank my executive assistant, Kat Norton, for being very thoughtful, because we wanted to remove any barriers for students who wanted to submit and having an option to do that. It is a very diverse group of students, and so, you know, students from identity, from a gender standpoint, but also racially too, of that composition. So we're excited to see the work that they do as they serve their individual communities as well.
Questions or discussion?
I'm sure that it will take some living into to, you know, just figure out how we're going to integrate a new member to the team. But again, really appreciative of the thoughtfulness of, you know, all the folks who've been involved in bringing this to fruition. Looking forward to the more deep engagement with students at the board level.
Yeah, I also want to say that I'm looking forward to definitely working with my team, for sure. I wanted to mention something that you said. You said something about treasurer or something like that. I wanted to get that clarified. What did you mean by that? Yeah.
We'll have an opportunity. So I'll be meeting with the full PAL board with Ms. Huffman, and we'll talk about what each of those roles are, as well as whether or not you guys will get money. One of the things that's important for Ms. Huffman is that this team has an opportunity to build relationships, and so she did ask if there was funding available to actually take them for some team building activities. So I'm sure we can find some money for that, Mr. Hoser, as we kind of move forward for that, but we'll talk about it when we meet.
Let's talk board committees, item 6.02. I want to thank everyone on the board for their patience as we've tried to work through bringing some coherence to the committee reforming process and thinking through which committees might be transitioned to district committees with board liaisons, which ones might be eliminated completely and have their work absorbed into other areas. There are 3 motions for us in action items, but I'd love to open it up for discussion to capture people's feedback on the committee proposal.
It's just happened.
Could we just review the difference for a board member at a board committee versus a board member as a board liaison? And then what is the expectation of informing the community at a board meeting, not at a board meeting? If I could get some clarity on that.
Absolutely. So the difference with the board committee is that those are actually sunshineable, and you need to have an agenda, minutes, they have to be posted, etc. For a liaison position, that is not needed. And so one of the things that Amber and I talked about is how do we ensure for those groups that are having a liaison board member still having the opportunity to actually present that. So if you notice within the board doc item, you have the board committees, and at the bottom you have the liaison groups. And so when those groups continue to meet, we still will use the reporting form and still have those items included, but you would report during that same time. So when the committees do begin to meet, the person who's the board representative would present, and then for the liaison groups, there's still an opportunity to present.
So the board committees have a bit of a feel of a board of education meeting where there's minutes and
For the most part. And I think, you know, the piece that I really was trying to capture were two things. What's the rationale for the individual committees that we will be leading, what type of composition we want to have, and then also looking at what's the role of the public participation based on the participation spectrum. So that was something that Josh brought up, saying, you know, what is the role of those committee members who may come from the community, but also continuing to share that for these board committees that are aligned to the strategic plan, there is an application process to ensure that individuals that are interested in serving, that they have a level of expertise that will help us move the work forward. Or if there's an individual who says they want to be on the finance committee, but they don't have any finance or facilities background, but may be better suited somewhere else, it gives us an opportunity, or the board an opportunity, to make some suggestions to those individuals. So once the board approves, or if the board approves, what we will begin to do is make that information available so individuals who want to be on those committees, they can complete the application for the board to review them.
So yeah, to just ground this in things that may feel familiar to some folks, I mean, we have historically had like a strategic plan committee, right? Or the long-range facilities planning task force that were purpose-focused, you know, community committees that the board created and then, you know, dissolves when, you know, a purpose is completed. Now, these may be longer term, you know, if these are connected to the strategic plan, maybe these are for the next 5 years, and then we decide at that point if that's appropriate, or at a shorter time period as well. I think the other aspect of this is, you know, there's an expectation that that work is transparent, but it's also, you know, it's a piece of what the board ultimately, like, you know, makes decisions from, right? So again, we had the long-range facilities you know, task force that made a lot of recommendations to the board, but then ultimately when we developed the you know, the ballot initiative for Prop E, we took that into account. We didn't include, you know, we couldn't include every single thing. We had to make some decisions, right? And so we're still the decision-making body, but it is an opportunity for us to get a more focused, you know, specific community input. I think the other piece that I want to make sure that we're thinking through and will be clear in our communication is there will be, you know, official committee members, but like a board meeting, other community members could potentially attend, and we may need to think about like ways for other folks to engage. Should somebody, you know, hear, oh, there's something really cool going on in this committee, like I'd be interested to hear it firsthand as opposed to, you know, read it in a bulletin or something like that.
So I made a note, Katie. Mm-hmm. So what I just make to summarize is given opportunities for communities similar to a board meeting to process, observe if they want to come and observe the work that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's like planning and zoning, right?
Yes.
In Maplewood, you know, any resident can go or any person can go and observe that, right? And potentially even have a chance to speak at certain points in time, right? So.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And to provide some clarity around the recommendations that we've made with the motions, specifically around the committees that we propose to dissolve. The Board Scholarship Committee has only been in existence for 2 years, principally to determine how we would raise money for the scholarship. In my humble opinion, as someone who has served on the committee for 2 years, I do think that that's activity that we can functionally execute outside of a formal committee structure. Mm-hmm. Particularly if we can focus our efforts maybe on an event and some kind of fundraiser through that. But I trust our expertise as a body to come up with some ideas about that outside of a committee structure. Also with
legislative advocacy.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Which was a committee that was formed last year and didn't meet through no fault of anybody, except that, you know, it's hard to gain focus when there are so many other things going on. And we have a legislature that roundly ignores our recommendations anyways. So editorializing aside, I did want to update this group that the St. Louis Regional Board Professional Learning Community, the PLC that exists for all St. Louis County, City, Jefferson County, and St. Charles County school board members who are interested in participating, are taking what was previously the monthly legislative calls that happened in the spring and extending those to be monthly throughout the school year for anybody who wishes to participate, with the goal of creating shared advocacy items in December to present to the session in January. So the October, November, and December meetings would be educational, like a legislation 101, and then the spring meetings would be about advocacy and implementation. So I am an organizing member of that particular group that I assumed from Katie when she stepped away. We've always had a commitment as a board to maintain some affiliation with that, so I have confidence that we will continue to do that. And I think what we've learned over the years is that as a region, we have very specific advocacy needs that aren't necessarily addressed at MSBA when we go to the annual conference and participate in the delegate assembly. So this is an opportunity for us to gain alignment regionally and come up with a platform that we can all sign on to. So there may be an opportunity for us as a board to sign on to an advocacy platform that is shared with other districts in the region. There will be a meeting December 2nd, a PLC meeting to focus on that. So I'll share those details as they emerge.
Are we going to add that maybe as an ongoing group that we want to be a liaise to?
Since it's not one that we operate or that exists, I think it's...
But neither is MSBA nor SSD Governing Council. So I'm wondering if it's of that importance. I'm curious if we want to make sure it continues to be noticed from year to year as we transition and change as people.
Would we want to make that determination after this year's evolution, and we've gone through it to see the value to us potentially?
Absolutely. Great.
And then the other recommendation is converting CBTF from a board committee to a district committee where it more appropriately should live given the needs of our staff. And to maintain board liaisonship to that.
And I will, just to share that as we think about school districts that have collective bargaining, and there is board representation, but it's not as a member. They are there usually just to process, observe the conversation that's occurring between the administration and those individuals that are reps. And so because we do not collective bargain, that is something that doesn't take place here, but we have been having conversation with both associations of where they are around unionizing. So stay tuned for that. And then also just a final reminder that the committees that are being recommended also support MSIP 6, because it is a requirement that we continue to monitor, provide updates to our community. And that was the feedback that we got from the strategic plan from the department, that making sure that we're continuing to monitor the plan and update community as we go along, which we already do.
So thank you to all of you who responded to the survey about your preferences for committee service, as well as for building liaison assignments. Oh, we've already got data back.
Look at that.
Thank you, Kat.
So we'll be taking this and making some follow-up recommendations based on everybody's feedback. But it looks like we were fairly well distributed in our preferences. I think we're going to be able to get coverage for all necessary areas and meet at least one of your first choice needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Calendar of events, 6.03.
No, wait, Madam President.
Oh, sorry.
So do you want me to liaise tonight? because I have two
Oh, yes,
committee
we've got
reports.
committee reports. I'm so sorry. Yes, please liaise based
Because
on
they
your
have already
prior
started.
years, based on your prior assignment.
So CBTF and Joe's Place met yesterday. CBTF had a robust discussion where reviewed some of what was discussed last year, but also started the process of narrowing what they want to look at for the coming year. Some highlights, benefits are always a big, absolutely are always, they're a moving target, and so that's always something that comes up in discussion. I think that's enough. There's a whole slew of things we discussed, but it was really quite high level, and they're still narrowing their focus. And so there's really nothing to bring other than great turnout, great enthusiasm. For me, as the observer, everybody was talking. Everyone was freely speaking and discussing and raising concerns and issues, and I think that's exactly what that task force is for. So I thought that was important. Joe's Place, still moving and shaking. If you happen to have some extra money in your pocket and you need a place to give it, Joe's Place could always use some extra donations. We are going to have 2 fundraisers coming up in the near future. One is probably going to be a pseudo maybe open house with a food component, and then the other one is we are doing a disc golf tournament, and I say that as a we when it's really not a we. There are some people who are going to run a disc golf tournament. So that will be coming, so please look out for that information. Our annual newsletter will be coming in the fall, which will also include a holiday wish list. It's an amazing program that our district collaborates with that is just awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, and my apologies for skipping over those important reports. Thank you for interrupting. In reference to the calendar of events, I just want to give a shout out to our high school building leaders for including all of their building and sporting events in their weekly high school newsletter. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, our tax rate hearing has been rescheduled for Tuesday, the 26th at 6:30. That's on Zoom, and the link is in board docs. We have our 8th grade boat races on September 27th and 28th. If you have a chance to come by and watch them sink or float, please do. We have our strategic plan roundtable event next Thursday, September 28th. That starts at 6:30 p.m. at the Masonry Institute on Big Bend. I think we have ample parking, but if we do not, there will be some street parking. No school on the 29th of September. Homecoming parade, is this a new thing or is it coming back? It hasn't existed in my time in the district, but it may have existed previously. Sunday, October 1st. Can we confirm this is 2 to 4 p.m.? I believe what's on the calendar may be incorrect based on what we've been getting from the high school
I
newsletter.
believe the time that I had is 10 to 12 for the homecoming parade for October 1st, but we can confirm.
I thought the 10 to 12 was the gathering and decorating with a hope to have the parade at 2. But no, I don't know that that's finalized yet.
Dr. Dietrich, do you have a microphone in the back? No. Oh, we need to buy microphones for the back portion.
So we have currently filled out applications for the parade route for both Richmond Heights and Maplewood. We don't foresee there being any issues. They're excited about helping us. Currently it is October 1st. Parade starts at 2 p.m. Starts at the Heights, because we want to make sure that we brought it through both cities. So it'll start at the Heights and at the high school. After it reaches the high school, that is when I believe, I will double check on this, because I'm just the parade part of logistics. That is when admin will be here waiting with them
a few additional items. We will have our MSBA regional meeting on Wednesday, October 4th. I believe several of us are signed up to attend board work session the next day, October 5th. Our homecoming games are scheduled for Friday, October 6th. I believe that's volleyball, soccer, and, am I missing?
Softball.
Softball. And then the homecoming dance will be the following night on Saturday, October 7th. Okay, any other items to add? It's a busy couple of weeks. Okay. We'll move on to our action items. Can I get a motion and a second for item 7.01, construction change orders?
Move to approve change order number 33 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second for 7.02, board resolution on membership in the Success Ready Student Network.
Move to approve the board resolution on membership in the Success Ready Students Network System Design Zone as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second for 7.03, board policy batch 2023B.
Move to adopt policies IGAB, IGC, IKE, IL-1, and IND as presented by MSBA in the 2023B policy batch.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second for 7.05, new board committees.
Kelly Services.
Kelly Services 7. I move to approve the
did I-
2023-24 continuation of Kelly Services for substitute management with increases as recommended.
Thank you.
You almost had Dr. Soap over here. She's like, wait.
No, skip me. This is why I need to keep my glasses on. Second? Can I get a second for that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now item 7.05, new board committees.
I move to implement the following new board committees as presented to align the work of the board with the recently adopted 2023-2027 strategic plan for our students, for our health, for our people, for our community, for our resources.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion and a second for 7.06, termination of Legislative Advocacy Committee?
I move to eliminate the Legislative Advocacy Committee from the list of board committees.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second for 7.07, termination of Board Committee CBTF.
I move to eliminate the Compensation Benefit Task Force from the list of board committees with the understanding that it will remain an active district committee with board member liaison participation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Motion and a second for 7.08, termination of Board Scholarship Committee.
I move to eliminate the Board Scholarship Committee from the list of board committees with the understanding that the process for securing financial resources to fund to the Nelson Minton Scholarship will remain intact within the annual duties of the board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.09, can I get a motion?
Go ahead, Christy.
I move to enter executive session in accordance with Section 610.021, subsections 3, 9, and 13, and Section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on September 21st, 2023, for the following specific reasons: personnel matters.
Roll call vote?
Second.
Reach.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Goldsman?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Whitcomb?
Yes. All right. Meeting adjourned at 9:24 p.m. We will enter executive session momentarily.